Have you ever wondered what keeps an arrow flying through the air after it leaves the bow? It's a really simple question, right? But it's a question that stumped some of the greatest minds in history for centuries. The answer, when it finally came, didn't just explain the arrow. It completely changed how we understand the entire universe. So, let's dive into how this one simple question changed everything.
So let's start right there. Let's do a little thought experiment. You shoot an arrow from a bow. It sails through the air. But why? I mean, what keeps pushing it forward once it's left the bowstring? Seriously, take a second. What does your gut tell you is going on?
Well, if you thought something has to be pushing it, you're in some pretty good company. For almost 2,000 years, the accepted answer came from the brilliant Greek thinker Aristotle. He figured that as the arrow flies, the air has to rush in behind it to fill the empty space, and that rushing air is what keeps pushing the arrow forward. And you can kind of see the logic in that, can't you? It makes a certain amount of sense. But here's the twist. That common sense answer, the one that seemed so obvious for so long, turned out to be completely wrong. It was a brilliant mistake, but a mistake nonetheless. And this is where our story really gets interesting, with the discovery that our own everyday experiences can actually fool us when it comes to the real laws of nature. So Aristotle's big idea really boils down to this simple rule. The natural state for everything is to be at rest, to be still. So to keep something moving, you have to constantly apply a force. The second you stop pushing or pulling, the motion stops. And you see this play out all the time, right? Any kid pulling a toy car on a string knows this. You have to keep pulling that string. The moment you let go, what happens? The car slows down and stops. Aristotle just took that everyday observation and said, okay, that must be a fundamental law of the universe. So if this idea seems so logical and it matches what we see every day, where's the catch? Well, it turns out Aristotle, and pretty much everyone for centuries after him, was missing a huge piece of the puzzle. There was an unseen force at play, a hidden variable that was clouding the truth of what was really happening. So what was it? What was this hidden variable? What was the simple flaw in an argument that stood totally unchallenged for nearly 2 millennia? The answer, believe it or not, comes down to one single word: friction. You see, the toy car doesn't stop because it's natural for it to be at rest. No, it stops because there is another external force, the force of friction from the floor, that is actively working against its motion. It's not that things want to stop, it's that friction makes them stop. And that one insight, oh man, it changes the entire game. Aristotle thought a constant push was needed to maintain motion. But the real truth was that push is only needed to fight friction. If you could somehow get rid of friction completely, if you had a perfectly smooth surface, an object in motion wouldn't slow down. It would just keep going forever. And the person who truly saw through this whole confusion, the guy who cracked the code, was the incredible Italian scientist Galileo Galilei. He used a simple but ridiculously clever thought experiment to imagine a world without friction and show everyone what was really going on. Okay, so stick with me here and let's walk through Galileo's brilliant logic. He started with 2 super simple observations. First, a ball rolling downhill speeds up, right? Makes sense. Second, a ball rolling uphill slows down. Still with me? But then, and this is where the genius comes in, he asked the game-changing question: what happens in between? What happens on a perfectly flat, perfectly frictionless surface? Well, if it's not going downhill to speed it up, and it's not going uphill to slow it down, then logically, its speed shouldn't change at all. It should just keep rolling with a constant velocity, forever. And boom. Just like that, with one thought experiment, he overturned 2,000 years of thinking. This led Galileo to a totally revolutionary conclusion. Being at rest and moving at a constant speed are fundamentally the same thing. They're equivalent. In both of those states, all the forces acting on the object, all the pushes and pulls, they all cancel each other out. The net force, the total leftover force, is 0. A force isn't needed to keep something moving, it's only needed to change its motion, to speed it up or slow it down. So Galileo basically set the stage, and the person who came on next to build the house was one of the greatest scientists of all time, Isaac Newton. Newton took Galileo's groundbreaking ideas about motion and turned them into his 3 famous laws, starting with what we now call the law of inertia. So what is this property, inertia? Well, the simplest way to think about it is just an object's built-in resistance to any change in how it's moving. You could almost say things are lazy,
They want to keep doing whatever it is they're already doing, whether that's sitting still or moving in a straight line.
And that brings us to the big one, Newton's first law of motion. This is the official formulation of everything we've just talked about. It's truly one of the cornerstones of all physics. It simply says that things at rest tend to stay at rest, and things in motion tend to stay in motion, unless some outside force comes along and messes things up.
Let's just strip away the fancy language for a second. All the law is really saying is this. If you add up all the pushes and all the pulls on an object, and they all cancel out to zero, that object will not accelerate. Its velocity will stay perfectly constant, whether that velocity is 0 or 1,000,000 miles per hour.
Now, I know this can all sound a bit abstract and academic, but I promise you, you feel the effects of inertia every single day. Let's look at an example that I guarantee we've all experienced. Just picture yourself standing on a bus that's stopped. The driver suddenly hits the gas and the bus lurches forward. Your feet, because of the friction with the floor of the bus, get pulled forward along with it. But what about the rest of your body? Well, thanks to inertia, it wants to stay right where it was. It resists that sudden change in motion. So while your feet get yanked forward with the bus, your upper body stays put. Relative to the now moving bus, it feels like you're being thrown backward. But really, nothing threw you back. Your body was just trying to stay still. That's inertia. And of course, the exact same thing happens when the bus driver slams on the brakes. Your feet stop with the bus, but your upper body's inertia keeps it moving forward, and that's why you lurch toward the front. It's not a force pushing you, it's just your own body's resistance to change. Okay, to really lock this concept in, let's go from a city bus to the final frontier. Here's a final thought experiment for you. An astronaut is floating in the total emptiness of deep space, way, way far from any planet or star. If she gets separated from her ship and is just drifting, what is her acceleration? Well, according to Newton's first law, since there is no net external force acting on her, no gravity, no air resistance, absolutely nothing, her acceleration must be 0, period. That means whatever velocity she had the moment she became separated, she will continue to move with that exact same velocity, in a perfectly straight line forever, or at least until she eventually runs into something. It's a powerful and honestly a slightly chilling illustration